Erickson's theory was based on the social experiences of a person rather than Freud's theory that was based on memories, thoughts, and urges. Erickson's theories consisted of 8 stages, as can be seen in the image, starting at infancy with trust versus mistrust, with many of the stages being able to be seen through the documentary Frontline, Children of Syria. Stage 3 is shown in the documentary when the girls are out exploring bombed-out buildings. The younger sibling is taking toys from the abandoned homes and plans on keeping them, but Helen tells them to leave them behind. Initiative versus guilt is shown here as Helen takes control and tells her siblings they cannot take the toys from the abandoned homes, as the toys are not theirs, but belongs to the previous owners of the house. Stage 4 can be seen in the documentary when Mohammed says, "I am not German, and I will certainly return to my country whether it's rebuilt or not." Mohammed says this knowing exactly how he feels, even though he is getting used to a new home that is much safer than what his old home is. Mohammed is showing self-confidence here because he is saying that later on he wants to go back to his country of birth. Stage 5 is also shown through Helen in the documentary. Stage 5 consists of developing one's own identity, and we can see this with Helen as she's going to school. At first, Helen goes to school as if she was still in Syria, like how she's wearing her hijab everywhere, but later she gets more comfortable and gains confidence enough to begin walking around town without the hijab, even though it's a custom.
Hello, I'm Grant Johnson, and I will be covering the subject of the universality of emotions. The concept of the universality of emotions was first proposed by Charles Darwin in his book The Expression of Emotion in Man and Animals in 1872. 100 years later, in 1972, a researcher by the name of Paul Ekman performed a study on a primitive type culture that were pre literate and isolated from the outside world. He asked a male member of the tribe to react to some situations. They were friends stopping by to visit, the death of his child, getting ready to fight, and stepping on a snowy dead pig. We can all probably imagine what faces we would expect he would make to each of these situations. After 40 years of research, Ekman returned and came to the conclusion that the expression of emotions appears to be universal, or at least worldwide. These expressions are the most easily recognized by most people: happiness, surprise, sadness, fright, disgust, contempt, and anger. One thing that confirmed Ekman's universality of emotions theory is that these emotional expressions can be seen in people who were born blind and had never been able to see these emotions expressed by another person. Body language is also part of the universality of emotions. We can be sensitive to emotions communicated through body language, even if we aren't aware of it. As we can see by the photo, it is pretty easy to see that this gentleman appears angry, or at least severely displeased. One of the most memorable examples we have in the Children of Syria documentary is when the youngest, Sarah, is told she cannot take toys from houses they were exploring. It is very easy to see her anger and displeasure in the photo on the left. The photo on the right demonstrates a good example of body language, in this case anger, associated with the universality of emotions. Fear, or fright, is another emotion that is easy to recognize. Here we see the youngest, Sarah, react to shelling going on outside while she is being interviewed. The bottom slides show Sarah reacting to an overhead airplane while they are in Turkey. Again, Sarah's act of running away in fear demonstrates how body language is associated with the universality of emotions. Our last example is happiness. It is hard not to see the joy on Helen's face while the family is in Turkey waiting on their immigration status. Another example, provided by one of my group members, is in the second slide. We can see Helen and Hala smile after receiving their passports so they can immigrate to Germany. While the universality of emotions is something we all probably knew about as social beings, we probably didn't know what it was called or if it was true. Paul Ekman was able to confirm this after 40 years of research.
Hello, this is Micah Johnson doing application question 3 on social psychology. When the family is living in Germany, they face some religious intolerance from the townspeople. They are stereotyped, face prejudice, and are discriminated against. A stereotype is a specific belief or assumption about an individual based solely on their membership in a group. Prejudice is a negative attitude and feeling toward an individual based solely on one's membership in a particular group. Discrimination is negative action toward an individual as a result of one's membership in a particular group. When the family is riding in a car to their new home in Germany, Hala tells her biggest fear. She says her biggest fear is religious intolerance, and people say that here Muslims are seen as terrorists. Even though the townspeople do not know the family, they can tell they are Muslim by Hala and Helen wearing a hijab. They took what they knew about Muslims from the TV and internet and placed those ideas onto them, stereotyping them as terrorists and bad people. The Muslims are discriminated against by the townspeople. When the family first moves to Germany, all is well and the people are nice to them. Though after a few months there is millions more Syrian refugees in Germany and the mood seems to shift. People are not as nice anymore. At school, the kids are being told, "Get out of our country," and "Why are you taking our money?" The townspeople in Goslar have negative interactions with the family because they have stereotyped them and have prejudice towards them.
This is Spring Kettler. I am going to talk about application number 4, having to deal with the Social Readjustment Rating Scale, or also known as the SARS. This was developed by Thomas Holmes and Richard Rahe in the 1960s. We're going to examine Hala, the mother in the documentary The Children of Syria. Hala, she scored an 80%, which is that's pretty high. So this is going to put her at a greater risk for health issues. On top of the fact that she also smokes a lot of cigarettes, drinks coffee. She does not sleep well because she's constantly in worry for her children. Once she decides to make the move to Germany, which the kids are, they're sad that they're leaving Syria, but they're happy about new change. So when they get to Germany, they really start to adjust much better. But mother kind of seems to still be withdrawn. And, she kind of stays alone and smokes a lot of cigarettes and obsesses over the computer and her phone, over whether her husband is alive or dead. Which is probably not healthy, but at least she's still taking care of the children. Now I want to talk about the trauma and stress for the children. Farah, one of the younger daughters in particular, she shows a lot of some extreme PTSD, especially when it comes to the bombs going off. Although she did help her father collect supplies for the bombs, like the ribbons and the shrapnel, she still has quite a bad reaction to it. She had almost like a breakdown when her father was taken, and she became physically ill, was throwing up and just kind of unable to function. This was at the point, mother decided that it was probably time to move and get her children out of Syria because things were becoming worse, and now her husband's gone. So she's lost that extra support. During their travels, they were in Istanbul for a little while, and Farah, with her siblings and some other family members, were hanging out at the park, and a plane flew over, and Farah, she went and hid behind the bushes and was very scared because she associates planes with bombings. So she did become a little fearful getting on the plane, her and her little sister Sarah, but they did do quite well. So, and they started to adjust much better once they got to Germany. And then we look at the older daughter, Helen, who, was pretty nervous when she was going to school for the first time in Germany because she wasn't really sure how they were going to accept her. But once she got into the room and she saw that they had everything was very welcoming to them, she seemed very susceptible. So she really was the one that kind of embraced the new life. She was able to be her own person. She stopped wearing her hijab, however you say that. Kind of felt like she was going to be her own person. With still remembering her time in Syria and how she loved her homeland. But she was embracing this new life. And I feel that that's like a really good example of the good stress. I think that pretty much covers how I took this assignment. Thank you so much.